Let's discuss with Fox News contributor, Democratic strategist Jessica Tarlov, and Kelsey Harkness from the Daily Signal. Good to see you both.
Great to be here.
Kelsey, is this kind of a duh, that someone is admitting that the New York Times has been pretty darn anti-Trump?
Well, if you're a conservative, it is most certainly a duh, but I hope it's sort of a wake-up call for those on the left who have been in denial about the anti-Trump bias coming out of the New York Times. And I think what's important to point out about this piece in this book coming out is that this isn't some anonymous rogue reporter coming forward. This is actually the former managing editor of the New York Times fully admitting and owning the fact that her former publication has a serious problem. So I do hope the left takes this seriously. I hope everybody who's involved in journalism takes this seriously, because journalism is an important institution in this country.
Absolutely. Jessica, let me let you respond by reading directly from the book. In part, Jill Abramson writes, though Beckett, as in Dean Beckett, the current executive editor of the Times, said publicly he didn't want the Times to be the opposition party, his news pages were unmistakably anti-Trump, Abramson writes, adding that she believes the same is true of the Washington Post. Quote, some headlines contained raw opinion, as did some of the stories that were labeled as news analysis. Now, you've heard this on Fox before, and people on the left will say, oh, this is just whining, belly aching, it's not true. But now you got Jill Abramson saying it's true.
Well, I think it's an incredibly important point to bring up that we've discussed before, actually, the blending of news and opinion. And I think that social media has greatly contributed to this kind of problem now that so many news writers or journalists are on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, sharing personal opinions that may not reflect the way that their work is supposed to be put forward. But I did notice one glaring issue with what Abramson is writing there, and that's that the New York Times actually broke the story about Hillary Clinton's email server, which many attribute to being really her downfall in all of this. And Hillary spoke about that herself on the campaign trail, and as well as in her book, What Happened. So I think that Jill Abramson makes some important points, and we should also highlight the fact that she didn't leave on good terms, and there was an issue between her and Dean Beckett as she was on her way out. But I'm more than happy to have a conversation about news and opinion, and we should try right-wing media while we're at it and go from there.
Kelsey, what about that point about Hillary Clinton always said, and I covered her campaign, that everybody thinks that the New York Times is soft on Democrats, and yet Hillary Clinton felt like they were tougher on her than anyone. But was it that they were tough on her about the emails, or was it that she messed up the email situation and they were reporting it? They had exclusive details about it.
Well, first off, I just have to respond and say that a lot of conservative publications actually own their bias. They own the perspective that they're coming from. And I think that's why people get so frustrated with the New York Times, because they don't own their clearly left-wing bias. But as to your question about Hillary Clinton, I do think the New York Times did cover her. They actually attempted to investigate her. That's their job. That shouldn't be an issue here. I don't think they covered her unfairly. I think, if anything, they could have covered her more.
You know this, Jessica.
That would be hard to do.
Jessica, on that point as well, there are some on the left who feel like the coverage of Donald Trump is too soft because they think they want to go after him even harder.
I know that complaint came up after the election results in 2016 when Hillary lost, and no one really expected that was coming. And people were hankering for more and saying you should be doing more work like David Fahrenthold from the Washington Post, who was doing itemized reporting on all of the Trump scandals from the foundation to the university and back again. So I understand that complaint as well. I think the real issue here is making sure that news and opinion are separated and clearly delineated, and that we don't have personal opinion or bias get in the way of a news story.
Well, Jessica, and you're an opinion person, and so when you just said, there's all these scandals in the Trump campaign and the Trump Foundation, you're an opinion person, giving your opinion. I noticed this very day there was a news story in the New York Times talking about, I think the phrase was, scandal-ridden Trump administration. Isn't that an opinion in a news article?
I don't think it is, actually, when you have something like the Trump University, the $25 million finding that they had to repay from that, what's come out about the foundation, for instance, what we've seen alluded to in the SDNY memo. We'll obviously know more once we hear from Mueller. Right. So I'm not sure if having a headline with the word scandal in it is actually a problem, as long as it's backed up, and it seems to be that there's a great amount of evidence.
Kelsey, 30 seconds.
None of those examples that you just cited actually have to do with the Trump administration. They have to do with entities outside that are related to Trump, but not the actual administration. Of course, we have the Mueller investigation that's ongoing, but we do not have that final report yet. So I don't really think it's fair to say that the Trump administration has all these scandals.
I think that headline, I'm guessing if it's the same one that I saw, was talking about Ryan Zinke, who just left in a cloud of scandal and abuse of his office, which a number of cabinet ministers have.
Kelsey and Jessica,
under Trump.
appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
All right, Happy New Year. And by the way,